Poverty is hell, and the angels are in paradise, driving in their limousine, where everything is nice and clean. A poor man living in a tinny winny hut, children hungry, nothing in the pot. He gone by the neighbor to beg for some rice. The neighbor under pressure, boy, things ain't nice. He gone in the big shot area to beg. A police put a bullet in the tinny winny leg. He gone in the courts and he lost the case. The prosecutor say he have a bandit face. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. Don't you know? Wake up in the morning and the baby cry. The sugar pan empty, the milk bottle dry. The little boy child on the mango tree. The mango green, putting up his belly. The young girl bawling, she wouldn't settle. She wipe, she bumsy with stinning nettle. Toilet paper, they never had. They used to do in the gully by the old backyard. They rub she down and they put she to sleep. But the rain come down and the house does sleep. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. Let the music now. A poor man always dream a lot of dreams. He happy like a puppy when he dream another dream. He dream that he have a new roof on the hut. He dream that he have some good food in the pot. He dream that he have a rich friend named Frank. He dream that he have a lot of cash in the bank. He dream that he pay all his bills for the man. He dream that he have a new car in the front. He dream that he have to go to a vet. He dream that his pocket have a big fat wallet. He wake up in the night and he rush for his pants. All he found in the pocket, a whole lot of ass. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. Don't you know? Slice them 10, 10, 10. A piece for a boy and a piece for a girl. A piece for the neighbor daughter moon. You know the cat in the corner looking the best. Little Jack corner kick him in the leg. Go in the room and look for a rat. The rat in the roof, he know about that. Now the cat see a chicky chong, yeah, yeah. He rush for the chicky chong. But the poor little chicky chong away like a chicky chunk, and then cockroach gone in the condensed milk. Mama get vexed for she condensed milk. Who leave the condensed milk open? Come here, you picky head, good for nothing. Mama get vexed and she blood get hot. She drop some lash in the you know what. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. Oh, yes. If ever I decide that I will deny my West Indian identity, just play me a calypso and I will run back and squander that identity. God's greatest gift to us In the car, poverty is hell. Winston Bailey, the shadow, the shadow. Who says that we don't have philosophers? You just listen there to a thesis on poverty. A thesis on poverty. Good evening to you all, wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from in Guyana or outside of Guyana. Welcome to Politics 101. Those of you joining us from North America, from Europe, from the wider Caribbean, our Caribbean. Some of you are joining us from Johannesburg in South Africa. Welcome to Politics 101. Those of you in French Guyana, and we say Cayenne, and Suriname, welcome to Politics 101. Tonight, we're going to get as authentic as we can get. Because you all know the telele not going away. The talk not going away. You know, they had I think it was a record store. They used to call it Talk of the Tongue, or a dance place. I think it was a club, Talk of the Tongue. Talk of the Tongue. The talk of the tongue is the cash transfer. And it's not going away. It's not going away. And we're going to continue to cover it on this program. Tonight, we have Professor Thomas on. Professor Thomas and Dr. Dennis Canterbury, the chairperson of WPA's Policy Committee. And we are going to be talking about the Buxton proposal. We are going to be talking about the Buxton proposal. The Buxton proposal is our proposal, the initial proposal. It's called the Buxton proposal because Professor Thomas was invited in 2018 to address the annual EUC Guyana Symposium. The annual EUC Guyana Symposium in 2018, and he shared the platform with Nigel Hughes and a representative from the Ministry of Energy, because the minister at that time, Raphael Trotman, he was invited, but he had some challenges and he didn't attend, and so he sent somebody from the ministry. And Professor Thomas rolled out the cash transfer proposal and immediately galvanized the country for the next year. That was the talk. I went back and did my research, and the conversation raged for over a year. That is what people are talking about. And people continue to talk about it, but as happens with these public things, other issues came up, but it never went away. And when Mr. Ali, the president, went to the National Assembly and introduced cash. They were calling it cash grant all the time. And when he went to the National Assembly, he called it a cash transfer. And I never heard the talk about household before. He said he's giving it to households. And that was it. It's now the talk of the tongue again. WPA had a press conference last Monday and dealt with it. And the press, we got some coverage in the press. But we want to deal with it in a comprehensive way. Tonight. And so we have Professor Thomas here. And we are going to deal with it. I put the original picture on the screen there. Thank God for technology. You see, we're not lying. Jack Dio say he is the first man. He is the PPP. Is the PPP proposal. Oh, you hear lie? That is lie. This was 2018 at the Friendship Primary School in Buxton. Full house there was there, and that was there. I happened to have been on the stage because I was the moderator. And you see Professor Clive Thomas there, Nigel Hughes, myself, and the young lady from the Ministry of Energy. And that picture is taken from the Stabrook News, So you all know we not lying. We not lying. I think we're ready. And let me bring in our guest tonight. And of course, we are going to be talking about this cash transfer. A couple of people, me emails and texts and what this WhatsApp saying they learn about the universal basic income. They thought it was two different things, the cash transfer and the universal basic income were two different things, and they now learn because we have forced the media to begin to talk about universal basic income. So we're doing it. Good evening, Professor Thomas. Good evening,
David.
Canterbury.
Good evening, David. Good evening, CY.
Professor Thomas, it's been over 6 years since you made that presentation in Buxton. As you look back 6 years, do you feel a sense of vindication? Because originally when the proposal was rolled out, the masses of people grabbed it and began to wave it all over Guyana. But of course, some of the elites were wavering, and all kinds of doubts and questions were raised. Some dismissed it out of hand. Some were skeptical. Some would say it can't work. Jack Dio said that it was technically unsound and it couldn't be put in place before 2030, if ever. Nandlal said that it would break up families and turn Guyanese into parasites. Now that the conversation is raging again, and the Guyanese people of all classes, all races, all stations in life are again part of this conversation. And as we said at the WPA press conference, of all the conversations on oil and gas, whether it's the contract and whether it's structure and how they're going to spend the money, it is the one aspect of the conversation that the masses of Guyanese people are involved in. Do you feel a sense of vindication?
Well, I don't want to define it or classify it as vindication, because that's not what I'm looking for.
That's right.
I don't need to be vindicated by the outcome of the proposal, because the proposal is a sound proposal. I have confidence in it, and I've done it on behalf of the poor in Ghana. And I think that this is a step in the right direction. I have confidence in that, and I feel that there's no way that we can turn the society away from the continuing progress in this particular direction. Poverty remains a serious challenge in Guyana. It's the single most important obstacle to its development, despite what other people might say. We have difficulties with the wages. We have difficulties with the environment. We have difficulties with consumption and nutrition. We have difficulties with housing. We have difficulties with health. All sorts of difficulties we have.
Education.
But at the base, all of them. At the base of all of these, I think, which is putting the greatest drag But the performance of the country is in fact poverty. And the universal basic income is a mechanism that is designed to tackle that directly, not to treat it as an incidental outcome of trying to deal with poverty. It's to confront it face frontally and to ensure that vigorous attention is being paid to it and is not left to be solved by some trickle down process. So I think I'm proud of trying to make an effort in that direction. And I'm even prouder that the party has been willing to adopt it as a central tenet of its drive and push from greater participation in the political process.
Dr. Canterbury, you are the chairperson of the WPA Policy Committee, and you've been very much involved in this recent process as far as updating the Buxton proposal and trying to get it into the public space. Are you surprised at the almost universal response of the population to the universal basic income a la the Buxton proposal?
No, David, I'm not really surprised because people would say they always need money. But I think what is more important to note here is the fact that there is this idea that you need to have economic growth before you can actually put monies in people's pockets. So you need the growth in order for them to redistribute it so that people can lead better lives, the poor. Now that strategy is a strategy that even the colonials were discussing when they were talking about the Mine Commission and whether they were going to introduce social welfare programs in the Caribbean. So here it is now that we are in a country with levels of economic growth that we're talking about. So why is it can't they take this economic growth and spread it to the community, to the Guyanese working people at large? So I think that it is important to do that. And I would say that we shouldn't really be gloating about the fact that they have embraced our ideas. We should welcome it. We should welcome the fact that they've embraced the ideas. But what they need to do is go even further because they haven't fully embraced it. And I'm sure that the ways in which they have moved away from the original Buxton proposal will come out.
Yeah, but I wasn't talking about them. I was talking about the masses of people.
Yes.
Yes, that the masses of people have embraced it. I know they have not fully embraced it. We know that. That's why we are still fighting. But my question to you is whether you are surprised that the people, the average Guyanese people, the working people, the working poor, the poor, that they are embracing it full-throatedly.
Yes, this is what I said at the beginning. People wouldn't refuse money. And I think
but it's not just about refusing money, it's their recognition that this money is not, they don't want it to go and spend rum, to go and drink rum, and to go and spend it really need. You talk to working people, you talk to people on this program, you look at their comments, and they're talking about how to use this money. They recognize that this is not just money. This is not just $100,000 that the PPP throw into them or a $40,000. This is not a handout money. They're recognizing that this is serious money that has to do with alleviating poverty. Are you surprised at that?
Yeah, I know. I agree with what you're saying there. Indeed, people embraced it because it's money coming in their pockets, and it's going to help them to do the things that you just described. It's going to help them to pay bills, etc. They can, but then, as we noted, that the money that they would be getting is not kind of sustainable, and we're not sure.
No, we're not talking about their money, the money that Jagdo is giving, or Ali. We're talking about Thomas' proposal of a universal basic income that is done in a structured way.
Yes, that is what they're embracing, but you
Yes.
can't. I don't think we could actually delink the two things, because people are seeing what the government is doing, and some people are actually linking the idea of our proposal, even though what the government is doing is not fully implementing our proposal, but people are actually seeing and recognizing the fact that the Buxton proposal is indeed something that can help them in a sustainable way to alleviate, if implemented, to help them to alleviate their conditions of poverty, and would also help them to be able to make certain investments and spending, etc. But it doesn't really stop there. I think it has to go beyond that.
And we are going to talk about that as we go through the program. Professor Thomas, one of the big questions out there, since the president announced first that they were giving this handout, because we are not calling it universal basic income nor a cash transfer. They're giving this handout to households, and then they change it that they're going to give it, as you characterize it, to voters rather than households. Talk, Professor, about why it is better, it is more beneficial to the country, to the people, to give the transfer to households rather than individuals.
I think it lies in the question you asked before, which yourself and Dennis have been interrogating. It's not just an income transfer. You're transferring to people a capability, an ability to acquire for themselves productive assets, look after their own physical well-being, so they get strong and able to be more productive, get better education, get better health outcomes. So to hoping to, in a sense, strengthen the capacity of working people within a social framework to deliver for themselves, both in terms of having to be more productive and to make use of any technology that might be there to help them. You're also recognizing too that in this situation, the opportunity of converting the income into other assets arise because you're moving people into the monetary economy. If you know that you can get, how you're entitled to a basic income of a certain amount of money every year, you can actually work out an opportunity to borrow off that capacity to obtain this income. As I was given the example of the press conference, 5,000 US dollars over 6 years to come in the future can be capitalized as 30,000 US dollars coming in some between now and the next 6 years. That allows you an opportunity to use that as a tradable financial instrument to build your own capacity to do other things. So the persons are not just consumers of income, they're utilizers of the capacity that this income affords them. If we see it in that way, we are not seeing it purely as a matter of raising the spending power only in relation to consumption. It's also in relation to investment. Because if you have, for example, an enumeration district in political terms, which tends to be about 100 to 110 households, and you multiply that by 5,000 US dollars, you know how much income you're given within that community? You're giving them a few million Guyanese dollars to be able to do things like sustain repairs to roof, to become a shoe repairer, to run some goldsmith companies, do all sorts of things within that little community. And it has multiply effects. What you're trying to do is to raise and give them all the opportunities that exist at a higher level of income. So it's not just simply handing income over to people. It's trying to use it as a self-generating and momentum-driving opportunity so they get better each day and each year. And some of them are clever enough to borrow in the future. Some of them, I know them, some of the financial institutions will know how to be able to go to people and offer them loans. They're sure of that, and people can sign that payment over to them as collateral. And many of them will feel the money that they're given or lending is safe. And that can be used for capitalizing things now. Some students I had who were doing master's degrees in Ghana, all of them, if they had that money, could have gone to a sort of, at least an online university and gotten it. I was helping them. And I realized that. So all those are single mothers. 90% of them had children, but they were graduate people working in different fields. And I realized that would make such a momentous difference to the way they saw their future and their children's future, that they won't be thinking of migrating and so on as their first option. So these possibilities arise. And that's what I'm trying to seek, to steer our attention to. And I think that's what the WP would want to stand for.
Professor Thomas, at the press conference, you kind of landed a bombshell as when you pointed out that if you give this cash transfer, this universal basic income to households, you are including rather than excluding people. And you point to a demographic that is very much part of Guyanese society. And that is teenage parents below the age of 18. Some of them
I would call them children who have children.
Children who have children. Yeah. And with the individual model, giving it to individuals, they're automatic individuals over
excluded, and they are giving it to individual voters.
That's right.
That's the insult of it all. Because they're not rooted it in some social expectation, some social foundation. It's just literally voting. If all you require to have access to this money is an ID card and over 18, then you'd give them what, by definition, what is a voter? The money. Mm-hmm. And you remove the opportunities of creating a social paradigm, as it were, within which you try to make and get a new direction of development for the Guyanese family. I stress the importance of the household, largely because I have followed the empirical research done in survey methods very closely in Ghana. I ran the Institute of Development Studies, so I'm very familiar with the work done within the Bureau of Statistics. I'm very familiar with the work that people do at that level. And we've developed a reputation, especially among agencies who are responsible for this type of work. United Nations, FAO, the World Bank, IDB, and that type of thing, for being able to develop models based on survey within the communities that utilize the household more regularly than is the unit used in other countries, where they find it difficult to know how to move away from the traditional family as the regular Western environment, where the survey methods are principally developed. We have been able to establish empirically that if you take two variables, one is sharing a common pattern, as I explained to you. A common pot doesn't just mean that you have a common pot in which you everybody eats from the food. Sharing a common pot means sharing on all the decisions about nutrition, distribution from what children will eat and what adults will eat, going to the market to buy the food, storing it, all those complex decisions that a household or a family would have to make, or a household would have to make. All that is entailed in the notion of a household. And so too the roof. A roof is more than a place where there's a galvanized sheet or a piece of wood over it. A roof could be a bottom house. I mean, it could be under the bottom of somebody's house. We call that bottom house. But that's maybe a roof where some indigent people live and they have a family living there. You want to give them a status and a corporate sense of creative possibilities. And they don't have to, like how we have to fight so hard to recognize common law marriages. We're fighting to widen the definition of a family. And we can see in a household as a concrete manifestation of that. That's what we're trying to do.
Professor,
I think we should pursue on the path and we should don't bother with naysayers.
Professor
I
Clive
think
Thomas.
over time we'll win them over.
Professor Clive Thomas here tonight, and I notice your comments there in the comment section. Well, we now learn. We learn it, and we're always learning, you know. We learn, even those of us with big thing, doctor behind me name, we still learning that in economic terms, a pot is not a physical pot, and a roof is not the physical roof. In economics, the definition of a pot and the definition of a roof goes beyond an actual pot and an actual roof. You all learn something on Politics 101 tonight, so that when they come to you all with nonsense, you all say you all learn it on Politics 101 from Clive Thomas, that when they talk about a pot in economic terms and a roof in economic terms, it means something much more profound than an actual pot and an actual roof. Professor Dennis Canterbury, chair of the WPA Policy Committee. Dennis, I know you've been thinking, researching, reading on this issue. And one of the things we always hear in Guyana when we deal with these issues, I remember when we were dealing with power sharing, the thing people would ask, how it will work. Has it worked anywhere? The same thing. I remember a certain president said he don't know what, at the time he said he didn't know what this cash transfer thing is about.
Let me laugh.
I know.
I quoted it in the revised version of it. I quoted it right in the front page.
Yeah. Dr. Canterbury, talk to us about this concept of the universal basic income cash transfer and its usage in other parts of the world.
Yeah, but just before on this question of defining the household, there is also a cultural dimension to how people may want to define households. You have to consider the fact several of the points that Professor Thomas just raised has to do with in some instances, the cultural setting of the people living in a particular community, and how they see themselves, and how the officials, the statisticians, may sit around a table and come up with actual definitions. We do have household surveys in Guyana. The Stats Bureau been carrying these out ever since. And when you go into the Stats Bureau in Guyana, they could tell you what is their definition of a household and how they arrive at the definition that they arrived at for the household. Now, with respect to this question of the universal basic income, now this is a very long story in terms of perspectives in it.
Yeah, has it been utilized in other parts of the world?
Yeah,
and give us some examples.
Yeah. I was looking at the situation in Ghana, but I wanted to first look at some of the theory behind it.
Yeah, no, but let's don't go to the theory. Let's don't go to the theory. Let's talk. We come to the theory. We'll come to
It's
the
not,
theory, Dr.
yeah,
Canterbury.
it's not
We just
coming
want
out
the
of.
audience to know whether this thing has been utilized in other parts of the world. Give us some examples of countries. I know Brazil, for example, is there. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, this idea of the cash transfer has a long history behind it. And so if because of the length of the history behind it, you would imagine that many countries have experimented with it and have implemented it. And it is not coming just from, and when you read the Buxton proposal, you'll see that Professor Thomas says that. He says that the cash transfer, this universal basic income, is not his invention. It's something that is in the literature. So that's why I was
But
pointing you to
give
the
us some
literature.
countries around,
And
like
so,
in Latin
so
America and the Caribbean. I know Jamaica, for example, has a version of it. I mean, give us a sense that it is used in other countries and it has been done so successfully. No?
yeah, many countries, and recently I've been studying the situation in Ghana, in the Ghana economy.
So it's used in Ghana.
And yes, and so it's in Ghana, it's in several African countries, it's in Latin America. In fact, during what they described as the pink tide in Latin America, where we had governments like in Bolivia, Brazil, in Venezuela, these countries that were classified as being, quote unquote, leaning towards the left, or what they described as socialism in the 21st century, or 21st century socialism. These countries actually were able to help people move out of poverty based purely on this notion of using this universal basic income.
Yes, and you introduce socialism there, but it's also used in capitalist countries, right?
Yes, yes.
So it's not a ideological specific proposal. It's universal. It's used in Texas, in Alaska, in parts of Europe. Yeah.
Canada.
Right, in Canada.
Yeah, right.
And I think the IDB just finished a study in the Eastern Caribbean to look at how the universal basic income / cash transfer can be used to alleviate poverty in those areas. Professor Thomas, in this morning's papers, Ravi Dev, writing in his anonymous column called Eyewitness, said that being the WPA, if we our proposal to distribute via the household and to make it universal, that we are taking money away from the poor and giving it to everybody, and that will increase poverty. Please address that.
I mean, the thing is so ridiculous. I don't think it requires a lot of intellectual effort. Obviously, in any situation where you have a limited amount of resources to give and you have to make a choice, we make that choice deliberately. I made that suggestion deliberately, recognizing that by giving everybody the same amount of income, the first outcome is that everybody gets increased income. And that is why the first conditionality was everybody has to report the income to the income tax authorities.
Yeah.
People pay income tax on a graduated scale in Guyana. That's like ABC. I shouldn't have to tell that person, a serious social engineer, that. So some of it is gross spending. A lot of it is net spending. Because those who are in the higher income brackets will pay back some of it to the government in tax. So the expenditure burden of $100 on the program is not the net effect of $100 being spent from the windfall revenues. We saw some of it will be returned by those who receive it and who have enough incomes to pay tax on it. So that's the first and I think an important point to make. The second thing is that why we're trying to do it that way is to remove all possibilities for corruption and racial favoritism. We have to make a choice. We don't want to appear to be giving monies to people who might be in communities and be, that are so desperate that we feel they should get more. Because if we take that decision as operators of the scheme, then we run the risk of people saying that is because we favor those groups in some political way. And once you begin to invite racial divisions into the choice of the recipients, you run into a serious problem that will kill the whole scheme.
Mhm.
So some of these things you have to do with a matter of precaution. You have to make it available to everybody so that nobody can claim that you deliberately set about to exclude them. And then you try to get it recompensed by having it reported to the income tax authorities, where you have a recognized and universal system based on the graduated income tax for recouping same. If it goes to somebody who doesn't earn any income, he or she will pay no tax.
That's right. That's right.
So
That's right.
those are ways in which we try to do it. And we also, that's why we also need, I think, to boast about the fact that we are very careful in this proposal. We recommend a pilot study as well as a feasibility study because we want to iron out all those kinks.
Mm-hmm.
We want to
Yeah.
ensure that we don't end up with a device that becomes controversial. So that when the future comes and we're not earning oil income at the same level, sometime maybe 60 to 70 years from now, we don't want to come under stress that we're not distributing the benefits fairly. Hopefully by then poverty will have been solved. My major fear, I will be honest with you, my biggest fear is that this government will squander the money coming in the windfall revenues. And I want to be sure that when we leave here on earth, that at least we get rid of the horrendous poverty that I think has prevented the country from growing and becoming a serious nation in the next 20 years. Because I see the opportunities for Ghana in the next 20 years as not being play. We are operating at a level that has never been known in the rest of the Caribbean.
This
Dr.
is why
Canterbury,
this is
Canterbury,
why
Dr. Canterbury, can you develop on that issue? The issue of the democratic principle at play in the WPA's proposal and Professor Thomas's proposal for the household, because we are a very divisive society, ethnically divided. We know that that is a big issue. And so when you, as Professor Thomas is saying, once you begin to target certain areas, you're getting into trouble. I'll speak to that.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly that. As you see, the thing about the Buxton proposal is that it addresses, it's universal, because remember Ghana has this problem with different tribes, as some people would say, or ethnic groups or race problems. And so with a universal basic income, one of the things you're doing is eliminating, or you're trying to eliminate or to put in a corner this whole notion that you're favoring one group over the other group, etc. But the other thing that I derive from what CY was saying just now, which I think is important, is that this thing has, he was talking about squandering the money, but you might also end up with, as stated in the proposal, fluctuation in commodity prices, and the oil price may go down. You may not get sufficient money in one particular period, which might impact your ability to pay. And besides that, while looking at the situation in Ghana, one of the things that sort of impacted their ability to pay in the past few years, and this is why they had to go back to the IMF, had to do with the fact that what they call the economic crisis in Ghana. And one of the issues, you might have a sudden pandemic, and you had the COVID-19 pandemic, and you had to put the monies in another direction. And so these things can impact it. So that's why I would say you need a kind of a fund to sort of a fund that you could, like it would operate like a price stabilization fund in agriculture, where with this fund, when you put monies in it, and if things get rough economically, then you can go to this fund to withdraw to pay these benefits. Because generally in a crisis, what tends to happen is that these benefits tend to become like low-hanging fruits, and they would just get rid of them first. And we've seen it in the past. The first thing they tend to do is to reduce or remove benefits of so this is part of the issue with the see what I alluded to just now with respect to squandering the money and then not having enough money to pay.
And the point you raised there about low-hanging fruits and getting rid of these programs, the way the WPA is proposing, and other people too are saying that it should be grounded in law. It should be, you should go to Parliament and let it be statute, which means that if you want to get rid of it, you have to get rid of it via law. It can't be the whims.
No, that's not what I meant by get rid of it. What I mean is that they make economic decisions when you have less resources.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you.
Then right. We tend to do is you cut.
But if it's a law,
the program will be there
like that.
The program
because it's in law.
The program will be there.
Yes,
you could trim it.
Right.
In theory, what we should bear in mind,
yes,
is that in theory we get an advice from many different quarters. In theory, we have a national resource fund.
Yes, in theory.
Which is a stabilizing fund.
Yeah, right.
And they had most of the money, about 90% of the money saved from the oil windfalls that have not been spent, deposited in that fund. So we have all those things are discussed in the proposal. We talked about the National Resource Fund and its compensatory spending. So it's not a new issue.
In case you're just joining us, we are talking with Professor Clive Thomas, WPA elder and executive member, and Dr. Dennis Canterbury himself, a professor, who is the chair of the WPA Policy Committee. And we're discussing the cash transfer / universal basic income / the Buxton proposal, which is, as the media are saying now, the brainchild of Professor Clive Thomas, the Buxton proposal, and first rolled out in Buxton in August of 2018, and that's why it's named the Buxton proposal. You all Buxton people, I know you all are here on this program, and some of you all saying Buxton people stop train, and this proposal is also named after Buxton, and you all think, but it's a Guyanese proposal. But of course, in 2018, as we do, every emancipation is that we don't just wind up and jump up and dance up and so on. We also use it as an opportunity for education. Hence, the UC Guyana Symposium each year invite an individual or a group of individuals to speak to a subject that is relevant to the African Guyanese community and the country at large. And in 2018, we raised the question of how to utilize the oil resources, because we knew that oil was coming. This was 2018, force oil was not there yet. So we weren't waiting. We weren't waiting until the oil began to flow to begin the conversation about how you would distribute the resources. And so therefore, Professor Thomas seized the opportunity. And I have to say that he took the country by surprise. It took all of us by surprise in terms of the profundity of this proposal. But the fact that he recognized that this issue of distribution of the resources is going to be very important. We have a government that is spending most of the oil revenues on infrastructure. And it is making the case that infrastructure is how we are going to develop. Professor Thomas is saying here, but you can't develop if you have poverty. Professor Thomas, speak to this issue about how you allocate resources, for infrastructure, for quote unquote education, health. And I note that you did say in your introductory remarks that the universal basic income has consequences for health and education and all these things which impact poverty. But speak to the issue of allocating resources to the various sectors of the economy.
Yeah, but before I do that, David, I don't like to spring surprises. But I'm wondering if you might not offer readers who get in touch with the WPA some opportunity to send an email copy of the revised version, the total page one that we have, which I think is fairly comprehensive because it deals in details with all the metrics, all the demand, supply, and price issues related to the financing of it. And I think people would find that at least some of the Guyanese overseas who are students might find that useful. They can get it by going to other sources. It's all there in Yahoo Finance. They can all download that. But for a package that we have at 35 pages, we could maybe for a donation just to help the party, might ask people to write us and we send one donation for it, send an electronic copy.
You hear the pitch there from the professor that you can get a copy of the Buxton proposal for a donation. I hit you all up for donation in a long time.
Long time, yeah.
And here is a way you're making a donation to the WPA and you get a copy of the Buxton proposal.
Was revised in 2022.
The revised Buxton proposal. So thank you, Professor. I'm going to put my email address up so that you can contact me for a copy of the Buxton proposal with a donation. You all know that I don't beg you all every day. And it's come, and the last time I come was for emancipation. Emancipation was 3 months ago. So you all
tell it's a long paper, the 35-page paper. So you get the value for money in the paper.
Yes. Thank you, Professor. Yes. The question of the distribution and allocation.
The allocation, that's largely, I think, a planning problem. I mean, we have to make decisions about priorities. We have established one of them, knowing that the Buxton proposal must be a part of the primary responsibilities for spending the money. I think a second one, which I've also argued in that very issue they will get of the Buxton proposal, which will parallel it, is spending on renewable energy. Because I've argued that whether we know it or not, Guyana is as richly endowed in renewable energy as it is in oil and gas. With a big export opportunity is there for us of sales of energy that will extend the life of our energy sales beyond the 2050s and 60s, if in fact a shift to renewables occur. And if it does, we will be in the driver's seat for prolonging the expansive growth of Guyana. That's why I think I made a point that Guyana will no longer be an incidental player in the Caribbean area. We should, in the next 20 years, be a major player in terms of wealth and decision-making and the future of this area. And I'm hoping we prepare ourselves for that. Because with it will come a lot of responsibilities. We have to give intellectual, scientific, all sorts of leadership for the rest of the region.
Dr.
And we have to
Canterbury?
build scholarship.
Sorry, I thought you were finished, Professor. Dr. Canterbury?
Yes.
You see, this question of resource allocation is key because they tend to historically they tended to focus on social spending, spending on the manufacturing sector, spending on transportation, etc. Right? But as CY is pointing out, the two categories that must be there would be spending for on the Buxton proposal as well as renewable energy. Now,
You mean spending on cash
how
transfer?
you allocate for the
You
Buxton
allocate
proposal.
to cash transfer
Yeah,
for
right.
universal basic income.
And then for on spending on renewable energy. So with those two items,
Dennis, before you continue, the reason why I make that, because I can't do all that in the remaining time. And because I think in growth in technology and innovation is going to be our primary source of long-term growth. And I think our capabilities for dealing with that are best suited for renewable energy as well. Because no country grows that does not grow as a result of science and technology innovation, scientific and technological innovation. And we can root ours, train our people to develop in that area. Because most of these technologies are manageable at the scale that Ghana would be able to be involved in experimentation. Even things like a gross energy, like fuel, conversion of biomass into
mhm.
alcohol from the cane farm, that would be the toughest of them all. That would require the largest volume area. But the scientific study of it opens up the area of giving leadership as a technologically driven nation. So we would see ourselves as entering not only an oil-based economy, resource-rich economy based on oil, but a resource-rich economy based on oil, renewable energies, and technology. That's where we have to visit, I think, going forward. We have to set our creative sights in the future and see what we think Ghana will be 30 years from now.
Yeah, but you see, this question of technology is so significant, and
It is the
AI,
most important factor in
yeah,
development.
AI, etc. Because I was thinking about agriculture as an area in which you should allocate, but agriculture is not merely in terms of planting, etc., but in terms of more advanced technological and scientific investments in agriculture. Yeah, you can have a farm, but then when you look at the agriculture sector now, the agriculture sector is high tech, and people are doing all kinds of genetic sort of engineering, etc., with the seeds, and so those areas we could get into as you know, in terms of allocating for technology as well. But I think what's critical for this point in time at this point in time is pressing for the Buxton proposal to be implemented as the Buxton proposal after a feasibility study, where we could actually define all the categories and concepts and be quite clear in terms of how we would be presenting this sort of how people would get the monies from the program, the cash transfer from the program, whether it would be electronically, whether it would be by cash, whether it would be by bank credit or bank deposits. It's a whole variety of things need to be. And I would also like to say that this would require a Guyanese effort. It's not, even though it's a WPA proposal, I don't think that what the author of it, Professor Thomas, is saying is that this is something for the WPA. This is something for Guyana, and therefore, it's the all sides have to be on board with it.
And of course, because one of the criticisms when we call for a pilot study and feasibility studies, some of ignoramuses are saying that we haven't figured out what a household is. We haven't figured out how we're going to distribute the thing. We haven't figured out. We have it. Our proposal is in the Buxton proposal, but we are saying that you don't have to take our word for it. Do a pilot study, do a feasibility study. So it's not that we don't have ideas on these things. We do. We do. And that is why for a copy of our proposal, it's 30 pages, comprehensive. Please email me. The email is on the screen there. Email me. And for a donation to the WPA, and we have all the things there, the Zelle, the MMG, Cash App, and all those things. For a donation to the WPA, we'll get you a copy of the Buxton proposal. Professor Thomas, anything that I didn't ask that you particularly want to speak to in relation to the Buxton proposal?
I think we should have a follow-up discussion. I don't know if leaders will get bored by it, but we can have a follow-up.
A follow-up discussion. And that's your closing remarks.
Closing suggestion. I hope it bears as much as the money.
Dennis, Canterbury, your closing thoughts.
Well, I support Professor Thomas's closing suggestion, and but just to say that, just to emphasize that this is something for Guyana and for the working people of Guyana, and not something for one ethnic group or racial group. This is something for all Guyanese, because the wealth that is being generated from the national wealth belongs to all the people of Guyana and not just some of them. And we're not playing politics with it. It is not something for votes. It is something to help to transform the lives of the poor and the powerless in Guyana.
To transfer the lives of the poor and the powerless in Guyana. Dr. Dennis Canterbury, professor himself, chairperson of the WPA Policy Committee, Professor Clive Thomas, who needs no introduction to us. I want to thank you all so much for coming on to this week's edition of Politics 101, our open word edition. And we will follow up with part 2 of this discussion, as you all would note that there are a lot of issues. Please, you can get a copy of the Buxton proposal for a donation to the WPA. We have the information scrolling at the bottom of the screen there. You can contact me via email. The email is itself at the bottom of the screen there. As you know, this is a continuous process. We continue to witness for our people and to strive for the best. And we here, we in the Working People's Alliance, we're not deniers. We are saying it as it is. Guyana is at a place, because of oil and gas, that it was not before. We have more resources now than we have ever had before. We recognize that the contract is not perfect. We would want more, but we feel emphasis must also be placed on how we distribute what we get and using what we have now to deal with some chronic problems. Poverty is number one. As Shadow says, poverty is hell. And you all know that what happens when you go to hell, you're born in hell. And we do not want our people to be born in hell. I quoted Sister Valda Lawrence when a couple of years ago, she endorsed and embraced the Buxton proposal. She said she know plenty old people who have sacrificed to this country and then got long more to live. And she want them to enjoy some of the benefits of a universal basic income before they die. They sacrifice to this country. Then get long more. And she said, that is our primary reason for embracing the universal basic income, the cash transfer, the Buxton proposal. We can't do this without you all. You all know that. I'm going to see you all tomorrow night. Same time, when we're going to do it. Because if we don't do it, nobody is going to do it for us.
When we speak of civil liberties and civil rights, people are beginning to understand that the most fundamental of these is the right to work in our society. And what is occurring in Guyana is that the government is making political capital out of the indefensible position of one who is either unemployed